Traders, how are you? With Marcello. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week, economy, finances, absolutely everything. This week we have Virgin Galactic launching the first spacecraft into space for tourism at $250,000 now. $450,000. We have Costco increasing prices at 250% on some food items. And we also have PayPal launching their own crypto stablecoin. Let's go and get started. Biggest news of the week was the inflation data. It was the first time that the inflation actually went up in the last 12 months. If I remember the percentage correctly, I believe it was 3.2% from 3% in June. 3.2 was July 1. I'll correct myself here in a minute because I have that a little bit further down in the data. But one of the things I found that was really interesting is I have a friend that grows his own pigs. And from beginning to end, packaging his own pork, the price went up from $3 a pound to $4 a pound. So at the most raw level, a farmer growing his own, food, his own pigs in his farm, it went up by 33%. And they tell us that the inflation rate is at 3-4%. Just so you get an idea that you're not the only crazy one, because when you go to the grocery store, you see a much bigger difference. Overall, the situation with the inflation is a little bit of a not a picky one. The word I'm looking for in English is it's a little bit of a testy one, I think is the word that we can use, because we live in a financialized economy where everything relies on debt. We've had these booms basically since 2008 and 2009 where everybody just goes out and buys houses and cars and all kinds of things because the interest rates were so low. And now we have a situation where the interest rates have been increased at the fastest rate basically in history, right? And so now everything has become much more expensive at a quick pace, and a lot of people can't afford things anymore because of what's happening with the interest rates. So this situation with the inflation is a big one because, well, if inflation keeps going back up, and we have some other data from the economy that basically shows the central bank that, well, maybe the economy is doing better than what we supposed it was doing, and that will incline them to either leave the interest rates higher or increase them again to make sure they try to get the inflation down. And the higher the interest rates go, the much harder it is for the economy to move because of the financialization of the entire economy, and everything basically relies on debt. The stock market in the US was positive except for the NASDAQ. That one went negative 1.93%. The Canadian market was positive as well. Overseas market news, the European markets were mostly mixed. The Swiss exchange was the biggest winner there at almost 10%. Latin America mostly lower. The biggest economy in Latin America being the Bovespa went down 1.22%. Africa and the Middle East, Egypt was the biggest winner there. Asia and the far east, mixed markets here looking at the numbers, but the Shanghai out of China was the biggest loser at over 3%. Bitcoin and crypto, PayPal, which is a huge market. They launched PYUSD, which is a USD-backed stable coin for payments. It's going to integrate the crypto payments on Venmo as well. This is actually really interesting for me because if you guys remember, just a few years ago, all of the corporations were like, crypto's the devil and crypto's going to cause the avalanches to start and the world is going to end. You remember that? Now it seems that since they got all the players that they wanted out of the market, Signature Bank, FTX, all these guys are going after Binance and also Coinbase. It kind of seems like now they want to jump in to kind of take the market share to get all the money. See how it works? And you thought we lived in a capitalist system? I don't think so, guys. WorldCoin, which is the company that was started from the ChatGPT founder, Sam Altman. They were scanning the irises and paying people in WLD token, $50 worth of the token. They have been banned in Kenya, and they went into the warehouses and raided the computers to be able to go ahead and review some of their information. The company WorldCoin selected Kenya because it has a really diverse group of crypto users. Over 4 million people in Kenya use crypto, and also a great booming tech space industry as well. Bitcoin for the week up over 1%, still kind of range bound. It closed at just over 29,400. And in commodities, rice prices in Asia have risen to the highest level in the last 15 years during the midweek. On concerns of global supply, remember that India, which is the biggest exporter of rice in the world, about 40%, decided to ban the export of rice. Now, Thailand is having a problem due to dry weather that's going to threaten their production as well. If you didn't know, rice, like I don't know if you guys have seen the really cool stair-step patterns of the mountains in Bali. Those are rice fields, and so they need a lot of water to be able to go ahead and grow. Thailand being another one of the major producers. Costco is reporting a 250% price hike on some food items as supplies run out of stores. Run out. The supplies aren't running out physically. They're running out of things at the stores. That's the way I phrased it. In Australia, 3 potential strikes are going to affect liquefied natural gas facilities, which control about 10% of global exports. The inflation data that came in this week, one of the biggest things that went up was actually the energy prices. So if we have a situation where things like rice is going up and things like, I mentioned you the story about my friend who's a farmer that grows his own pigs. That went up 33% because of the feed, right? They obviously pigs eat anything, but they buy the feed to be able to go ahead and feed the pigs so they don't have to go out and roam and catch their own food, right? And so if oil keeps going up and now liquefied natural gas goes up, which the majority of the world still runs on these carbon fuels, that means that the energy prices could continue to go up, which means that in the near future, we might have much more inflation than what we were expecting. International Energy Agency is forecasting record demand and tightening supplies for oil. This is why this has been a 7 straight week of gains, the longest streak since last year in 2022. U.S. crude went up by 0.44% to 83.19, while Brent went up 0.66% to 86.81. And the precious metals market haven't been doing well. Silver's down for the 4th week in a row. It went down 4.26% this week to 22.76, while gold went down 1.54% to 19.14 and 10 cents. Financial and banking news: the World Bank has banned further financing to Uganda due to its adoption of an anti-homosexuality act, basically a law that bans homosexuality. Moody's cut ratings for 10 small and mid-sized banks on Monday. They said that they might downgrade some of the bigger banks as well. And I think this is really interesting because I think what's happening is in order for them to control everything and implement the government coin, they need to have a small amount of players, right? Maybe 5, 10 really large banks. So I think what this is the beginning of is basically them trying to kind of root out a lot of these smaller banks to have like the bankruptcies that we just went through, for example, a few months ago, where they could buy them on the cheap, sell them to the big ones, and then we have this just huge monopoly where the government come in and just say, hey, it's time for you to use our government coin or you can't eat. At least that's what Conspiracy Marcello says. At $1.8 trillion wall of U.S. corporate debt is coming due. Could cost a lot of jobs. That's what investment banker Goldman Sachs warns. Every additional dollar of interest expense, that means that they have to cut expenditures by 10 cents and labor costs by 20 cents. So basically the cost of a lot of the debt of corporations is skyrocketing because of what I told you guys in the beginning in regards to the interest, right? Federal bank, the Federal Reserve, which is a central bank in the United States, raises interest rates, increases the debt by a huge amount, right? If it's gone up from 3% to 7%, basically the monthly payment on everything that you take a loan out on has more than doubled. See how that works? And that's going to cause people to cut more costs and also lay off a lot more people. Italian banks took a major hit. The government in Italy is instituting a new wealth tax on extra profits at 40%. That's not the only country that has done this. Hungary and also the People's Republic of Spain has instituted it as well for a lot of windfall taxes. And they say it's to be able to use to help other mortgage holders, which are affected by the higher interest rates as well, and will be used to cut taxes, which is it is a good thing to cut taxes, especially in a place like Italy, where the corruption is rampant. The CPI, or the Consumer Price Index, in France, China, and Japan all went down after government reports. let me guys know. I can give you guys the exact percentages and things, but I don't think it's really important where these economies outside of China aren't really, well, Japan too is the third largest economy in the world. But let me know if you guys want to know the exact numbers. I think with all these inflation numbers coming out, I think it's just better to tell you, well, it's up, it's down, that kind of thing. US inflation, as I mentioned to you guys, it's 3.2% from in July, 3% in June. Remember that it was at a 40-year high and 9.1% last year in 2022 in June. But remember the story that I just told you guys about the pork. It's not really 3% now, is it? Major concern now in August is the acceleration of energy prices, as I mentioned to you guys. And industrial production in Germany has dropped by 1.5% in June, much sharper decline than expected. This isn't a good thing for the world economy because obviously the German economy is the fourth largest in the world and the largest in Europe as well. Political news, there was an assassination at a presidential candidate in Ecuador. A right-leaning candidate shocked the country. Now there's a lot of drug-related violence in the country, which there was a period, I believe about 15, 20 years ago where they had 7 presidents in the span of 9 years or something like that. So hopefully it'll settle down a little bit. In economic news, the Labor Department reported that the U.S. initial jobless claims rose by 21,000 to 248,000. That, again, is not a good number because obviously if there's more people asking for unemployment support, that means that the economy isn't doing as well as we thought it was. And in corporate news, Alibaba went up over 4% after they crushed earnings. They made $1 billion more than what was expected of them. The revenue was $32.4 billion in the quarter. $32 billion in the quarter. It's not the profit. That's the revenue. And Berkshire Hathaway, with this Warren Buffett's companies, posted its highest quarterly operating profit in history at $36 billion. Their cash obviously is absolutely exploding as well. And remember what Warren Buffett always says, nobody copies what he does because they don't want to get rich slow. Disney's up almost 5% after they said that they're going to raise the prices of their ad-free pricing and also cut down on password sharing. They went up, they had a 7% decline after they reported another decrease in subscribers in the last quarter. And trucking firm Yellow Corp, which had about 8 to 10% of the market share in the United States, has gone into bankruptcy. They are now in court in bankruptcy protection. There's about 30,000 jobs that are affected by this company. It's a 100-year-old company, and it's not a good thing because if 8 to 10% of the trucking industry is going bankrupt, that means that the other trucking companies aren't doing that well. Glencore, the largest miner in the world, fell over 4% after their revenue went down over 50% year over year. This is partly due to the crash in the coal prices, and a privacy storm is brewing for Zoom. Zoom is the kind of like a go-to webinar where you do online classes and all those kind of things. They updated their privacy policy where now they can use customer-generated contact for any purpose they see fit, including training and artificial intelligence, and you're not able to opt out. So, trade news, the exports in China fell over 14.5% year over year. Imports are down 12.4%, and that is the worst showing for outbound shipments since February 2020. So now we have negative information as well from the second largest economy in the world. And the export for me are the bigger news, right? Because everybody essentially imports stuff from China. So if their exports are going down, that means that consumers around the world aren't spending as much money. And consumer spending in most advanced industrialized nations is the biggest percentage of the economy. Just to give you an example, the United States is almost 70% consumer spending. So if people aren't spending money, that means that the economy isn't moving. The Europe exports to Russia dropped 31% during the first 5 months of the year. Remember all the sanctions that were placed due to the Russian war in Ukraine. But one of the things that's really curious is that the shipments of exports from EU countries to Russia's neighbors like Kazakhstan, Central Asia, and Belarus are up 105% to Kazakhstan and 75% to Belarus and Central Asia. So basically what that means is instead of just going directly to Russia, they're just using a pit stop and then going to Russia. That's why the sanctions essentially don't work. And Virgin Galactic in technology, founder Richard Branson has launched his first round of space tourists. It was 3 people, 2 women, and an Olympian named named John Goodwin. They have a backlog of 800 tickets already purchased, 600 at the price of $250,000 each, and 200 at $450,000 each. So if you want to go to space, just save up about $500,000. Who said there wasn't any inflation? And in international events, unfortunately, I know you guys have probably seen the wildfires in Maui. There was up to 80 people dead. The entire resort town of Lahaina was completely decimated. The situation was so bad that there were people jumping into the ocean to try to avoid the fire. And in South Beach, the sand was 137 degrees. In Celsius, it's about 58 degrees. So just burning up out there. And in interesting facts, there's somebody who won the $1.58 billion lottery in Florida, second largest lottery reward by a single person in U.S. history. And they're going to receive about, the real winner is the federal government, because they're going to get only half of that at about $750 million. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe. And remember, the preppers were right.